The shelter mic picked up a voice at 2:13 a.m. Mine. At least, that's what the waveform said when I checked the file the next morning. A clean spike, right in the middle of 6 hours of static. I hadn't said a word during the recording. I'd left the mic on its stand, locked the door behind me, and gone back to the dorm like I always did. The civil defense shelter behind the mechanical building was supposed to be silent. No electricity, no airflow, nothing alive down there. But when I hit play, I heard it. A single word, soft, close. Jared. It came through the metal echo of dripping pipes, the kind of echo that eats everything else. For a second, I thought it was feedback from the recorder, or maybe my voice caught while I was setting up. But the tone was wrong, too calm, too steady, like someone who'd been standing there a long time, waiting for me to leave. I boosted the volume, just to be sure. Behind the whisper, there was movement, a scrape, a shift, the faint hiss of something breathing near the mic. Then silence. I looped it 10 times, thinking I'd find some pattern in the noise, but every playback felt a little different, like the file itself was changing each time I listened. I checked the logs. The recorder had stopped at 2:16 a.m., 3 minutes after the voice, battery full, no sign of failure. Just stopped. When I zoomed in on the last few seconds of the waveform, I noticed the peak splitting apart, left and right, as if the sound was coming from both sides of the mic at once. The stereo field twisted, like someone walking in circles around it, and right before the file cut out, there was another sound. Footsteps, faint, then heavier, getting closer. Then the same voice again, quieter this time, like it was leaning into the mic. Jared. I sat there, listening in the dark of my dorm, feeling the air shift around me. I knew I'd been alone down there. I knew it. But the voice on that tape, it was mine. And the worst part? I didn't remember saying a word that night. My name's Jared Moss, 21. I study architecture at Ravenhill University, a campus that looks like it was designed to trap echoes, stone halls, empty courtyards, stairwells that hum even when there's no wind. I live in North Hall, top floor, room 418, with my roommate Tyler Brooks. He's an electrical engineering major who believes in facts, circuits, and nothing else. If it can't be measured, it doesn't exist. That's what he says. We split the room clean down the middle. My side cluttered with tripods, mics, and old recorders, his side stacked with wires and textbooks. Every week or so, I pick a forgotten space on campus and leave a mic running overnight. Old maintenance tunnels, lecture halls no one uses, the West greenhouse that never opens anymore. It started as part of my acoustics project, how sound decays in abandoned architecture, but lately it's become something else, a habit, or maybe a compulsion. I tell myself I'm just collecting ambience, but I think I'm listening for proof that silence isn't empty. Tyler calls it ghost podcasting. He'll grin and toss a screwdriver at me whenever I start explaining the harmonic structure of dripping water. He says, "Dude, you're one bad night away from sleeping with your recorder on." He's probably right. I've always liked the quiet parts of this campus. Ravenhill sits on a ridge surrounded by pines, with fog that rolls in thick every evening. You can hear the trains down in the valley, their horns bending through the mist. It's beautiful, in a cold way. When the fog's heavy enough, every footstep sounds doubled, like someone's walking just behind you. Back home, before college, my mom used to hum while she cooked. She had this low, steady pitch that made the house feel safe. When she passed, the house got too quiet. That's when I started recording things, trying to catch that hum again in other places. Tyler doesn't know that part. I don't tell him much. Ravenhill's architecture is strange, half Gothic, half Cold War modernism. You can still find fallout shelter signs on some doors. The civil defense emblem, faded orange triangles pointing toward a rusted stairwell. I think that's why I chose this university. It felt heavy, like the walls remembered everything that had ever been said inside them. Last semester, I found the shelter by accident, behind the mechanical building, half buried in ivy. There's a locked steel door marked Civil Defense Shelter, 1958. The letters are rusted but still sharp. There's a vent beside it that hums even though there's no power. The sound is perfect, dense, metallic, with a long tail that never really ends. That was my first recording down there. I didn't go inside. I just left a mic by the vent and came back the next morning to collect it. When I listened, the audio was clean. No whispers, no distortions, just that endless hum. I remember feeling proud, the kind of satisfaction you get when the universe does exactly what it should. Then I left the mic there for a week. I told myself I was testing long-term decay, but really I just liked the idea of a recorder still running in the dark, like it was keeping me company. After the 2:13 a.m. file, I told myself I'd leave it alone. But the next night, Tyler found me looping the recording again. He leaned over the desk, listening to the whisper. When it hit the part where the voice said my name, he blinked and asked, "That you?" I said I didn't know. He frowned, then laughed. "Man, that's creepy as hell." He turned off the speaker. "Delete it." I didn't. I copied it to my phone instead. Then I noticed something new. When I played it through headphones, the voice seemed to move, left to right like someone pacing around the mic. It wasn't just random static. It was intentional. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that door behind the mechanical building, how the vent hummed even when the power was out, how the air near it felt colder, heavier, like it was listening back. Tyler snored on his side of the room. The radiator clicked. Somewhere down the hall, a vending machine coughed to life. Normal sounds, comforting. But then, around 3 a.m., my Bluetooth speaker lit up blue. No phone connected, no app open, just the same soft hiss from the shelter file, and under it, faint, almost polite, a single word. Jared. I froze. The light blinked once, then went dark. I checked my phone, no playback app running. The waveform was closed, but the battery read 2:13 a.m., the same timestamp as the original file. The next morning, I walked past the mechanical building on my way to class. The air smelled like rain and old concrete. I stopped by the fence line, pretending to tie my shoe, and looked at the shelter door. The vent was still humming, only this time the sound seemed faster, like someone breathing behind metal. That night, I asked Tyler if he'd ever been in that part of campus. He said, "No one goes there. The lower levels are sealed." I asked, "Why?" He shrugged. "Radiation drills, I think. Some Cold War crap. Gardner would know." He meant Mrs. Gardner, the campus archivist. I'd seen her once, pale, bird-like woman, always smelling of dust and paper. Something about the way Tyler said her name made me curious. By then, the voice had stopped scaring me. It felt familiar, almost comforting, and if it really was mine, maybe that meant something. That's when I decided I'd go back to the shelter, not to record this time, just to listen. I told myself I just wanted to check the equipment. That's all. It was late afternoon when I went back to the mechanical building, the one that backed up to the ridge where the old civil defense shelter sat buried underneath layers of concrete and ivy. The air smelled like rust and wet dust, that sharp tang metal leaves when it breathes after rain. The fence around the service yard was bent inward, like something had pushed through years ago. I ducked under it and followed the slope down to the sealed door. In daylight, it looked smaller, almost harmless, a sheet of corroded steel welded shut at the edges, but up close, the seam on the lower right corner had cracked open, a hand-sized hole exposing darkness behind it. The words, "Civil Defense Shelter, 1958, were still visible. The paint had blistered, and the numbers bled down like dried tears. I brushed the dust off and set a new mic near the vent, a fresh recorder clipped to the stand. I didn't hear anything unusual at first, just the soft draw of air moving through pipes that shouldn't exist anymore. I checked the levels, watched the needle twitch, waited a few seconds, then leaned closer to listen through my headphones. That's when I heard it. Jared. I froze. It wasn't the same whisper as before. This voice was brighter, clearer, the accent, the rhythm. It was Tyler's. "Jared, I think there's something down here." My stomach tightened. The signal meter spiked, then dropped to 0. I pulled off the headphones, looked around. The yard was empty, no sign of anyone. I put them back on. Nothing, just the hollow rush of air. I rewound the last few seconds and listened again. Same voice, same words, my roommate's tone, matching him perfectly. But Tyler had been in class all day. I texted him anyway. "You near the mech building?" He replied 20 seconds later. "Nope." "Why?" I didn't answer. I checked the recorder, timestamp 3:47 p.m. The signal had come through live. For the next hour, I tried to explain it away. Maybe the recorder picked up a radio transmission, or maybe someone nearby shared Tyler's voice range. The rational part of me clung to that. The rest of me kept staring at the crack in the metal. When the sun dipped low, the temperature dropped with it. Mist gathered around the vent. The hum deepened, lower now, like a breath drawn through wet fabric. I felt it against my skin. I packed the gear and left fast, cutting through the back quad toward the library. Mrs. Gardner was there, as always, tiny, pale, her hair the color of cigarette ash. She worked the archive desk in the basement level, where the lights buzzed soft and the smell of paper turned sharp with mold. She didn't look up when I entered. I cleared my throat first, trying not to startle her. "Mrs. Gardner," I said quietly. Her eyes lifted, watery blue behind thick lenses. "Yes?" I hesitated, unsure how to start. "I'm looking for information on the Civil Defense Shelter, the one behind the mechanical building." She paused mid-motion, one hand still on a stack of index cards. Her tone flattened, cautious. "That shelter was sealed after an accident," she said. "Long before your time here." I stepped closer. "What kind of accident?" She blinked slowly, then replied without emotion. "A maintenance man went missing down there." She adjusted her glasses. "Halden, I believe." "George Halden." "Missing as in never found?" I asked. She nodded once. The gesture was small, deliberate. "The report said he was repairing the ventilation system during a blackout. The hatch was open for less than an hour. When they checked again, he was gone." I waited for her to smile, to make it sound like a campus legend. She didn't. Instead, she lowered her voice until it was almost a whisper. "That shelter was sealed after a maintenance man vanished. His name was Halden." The way she said it, slow, careful, made the air feel heavier. Then she looked straight at me, her eyes suddenly sharper. "You didn't open it, did you?" I shook my head too fast. "No, of course not." She studied me a moment longer, lips pressed tight, then turned back to her work. Her next words were barely above a breath. "If you value your quiet, Mr. Moss, leave that place alone. Some echoes don't fade." I didn't answer. The hallway outside felt colder than when I'd walked in. By the time I reached North Hall, the sun had dropped behind the ridge. Tyler was sprawled on his bed, earbuds in, scrolling through something on his phone. I told him what happened, the voice, the crack in the door, the librarian's warning. He looked at me like I was setting up a punchline. "What? You think you found a ghost frequency?" he said, half laughing. "I'm serious," I told him. "It said your name, your exact voice." That made him pause. He sat up a little, one earbud dangling. "Okay, play it," he said finally. I pulled out the recorder and hit play. The whisper filled the small dorm room, sharp and close. When it ended, Tyler stared at the speaker. "Man, that's me," he said slowly. "That's literally my voice." "Yeah," he frowned, rubbing his neck. "You sure this isn't some weird reverb trick? Feedback through the pipes?" "It came through the vent. Real time," I said. My hands were still tight around the recorder. Tyler exhaled, a shaky laugh trying to cover his unease. "That's messed up." He glanced at me, searching for a sign I was joking. Then he smirked weakly. "Okay, maybe Halden's ghost likes podcasts." I didn't laugh. The silence stretched a bit too long. Finally he said, softer this time, "You're not thinking of going back, are you?" I didn't answer right away. My eyes drifted toward the recorder light, still blinking red. But we both knew. That night, I couldn't focus on anything. Every sound in the dorm felt magnified. Water running through pipes, footsteps in the hall, the steady tick of the radiator. Around midnight, I opened the shelter recording again. The waveform looked normal until the very end. There, buried in the noise, was a low hum, a frequency too even to be random. When I isolated it, the shape of the waveform almost looked like a pattern, repeating intervals like breathing. I stared at the crack on the file's graph and thought about the crack in the door. Around 2, I made up my mind. I grabbed the spare recorder, a flashlight, and a crowbar from the maintenance closet near the stairwell. Tyler was asleep, one arm dangling off the bed, his earbuds still in. I hesitated for a second, listening to the faint rhythm of his breathing. Then I slipped out. The night air was colder than before, sharp enough to sting. The path down to the mechanical yard was slick with dew. I kept telling myself it was just research, that I needed closure for the project. But the closer I got, the quieter everything became. When I reached the fence, the hum from the vent was louder, almost a pulse. The crack in the door had widened, flakes of rust scattered like blood around the edges. I set the flashlight down, wedged the crowbar into the seam, and pressed. The weld groaned, old metal flexing against itself. The air that spilled out was heavy and wet, colder than the night around it. My breath fogged instantly. I pulled the recorder from my jacket, thumb hovering over the button. "Just a peek," I whispered. "Then I'm done." The mic light blinked red. Something inside shifted, slow, dragging metal against stone. I lowered the crowbar, heart pounding. The vent hissed once, like a sigh, and from deep inside the dark, faint and deliberate, came the sound of someone knocking back. The door gave way with a sound like bone cracking. I flinched as a strip of rusted steel tore loose, hitting the ground beside my shoe. The air that poured out smelled thick, damp concrete, oil, and something faintly sweet like old rot sealed too long. I leaned in with my flashlight. The beam cut across a narrow stairwell leading down at a steep angle. The steps glistened with moisture, black and uneven. At the bottom, a metal sign hung crooked against the wall, its paint half-eaten by rust. Fallout room. I told myself I'd only go as far as the first landing, just to look. But the second I stepped inside, the hum behind me changed pitch. No longer a vibration in the air, but a low tone under my feet, as if the floor itself were resonating. I started recording on my phone, the camera light trembling in my grip. Audio log, November 3rd, 2:41 a.m., I whispered. Entering the civil defense shelter behind the mechanical building. Structure appears stable, for now. The walls were close enough to brush both shoulders. Condensation dripped from pipes running along the ceiling. Each drop landed with the same rhythm, slow and steady, until one didn't. The next drop came faster, then faster still. I stopped walking. The dripping wasn't random anymore. It was keeping time. And under it, soft and clear, came a whisper. Jared. The word echoed down the stairwell, repeating on itself. One voice, then two, then dozens, each one slightly off like an overlapping recording. I raised the flashlight, aiming into the dark below. Hello? The echo bounced back, the same tone, same pitch, my own voice. I swallowed hard. Is someone there? The answer came a second later, perfectly matched to my question. Is someone there? It wasn't delayed like an echo. It responded. I gripped the railing to steady my hand. Okay, this is just sound reflection, acoustics. But the words trembled. I kept walking. At the bottom of the stairs, the corridor widened slightly. The beam of my light swept over faded civil defense posters, silhouettes ducking under tables, arrows pointing toward evacuation route. One sign read, Radiation Area, Authorized Personnel Only. The floor was slick, puddles rippling from the vibrations in the air. The whole place hummed like an instrument being tuned too low. I turned the camera toward a junction box on the wall, speaking louder this time, trying to sound steady. Shelters deeper than expected. Power's still running somewhere. Hearing electrical resonance in... A sound cut through my sentence. Footsteps, not echoes, real ones, slow, heavy, coming from the hall ahead. I killed the flashlight instinctively. The dark swallowed everything. The steps stopped too. For a full minute, the only sound was the faint buzz of my phone mic. Then, from up ahead, came the scratch of fabric moving against metal. A figure stepped into the edge of my camera light. A man in a gray maintenance jumpsuit, soaked through, his ID tag swinging from one thread. His skin was colorless, almost blue. His eyes didn't quite focus on me. I froze where I stood. Sir, are you okay? He lifted his head slowly, voice dry and steady. It's still awake. What? Don't listen to it. I stared at him. His mouth moved wrong, like every word cost effort to push out. He took a small step closer. It doesn't stop once it knows your name. My breath caught. You're George Halden, I said before I could stop myself. He flinched, barely perceptible, like the name itself hurt him. Then he shook his head. Don't say it. I thought you were gone, he finished for me. His eyes darted down the hallway. It remembers, through walls, through the vents. He turned and started walking, his limp slow and uneven. If you want to live, don't speak. Just follow me. We moved through the corridor in silence. The air grew warmer the deeper we went, though the walls sweated with condensation. My flashlight flickered every few seconds, a heartbeat of light and dark. Pipes along the ceiling hissed and rattled. The hum under the floor pulsed again, louder this time, like the whole shelter was breathing in sync with us. We reached a heavy blast door half open on rusted hinges. On the other side, the space widened into a control room, panels of gauges, cracked glass, old dials still glowing faintly green. Halden pointed to one of the speakers mounted above us. It speaks through those now, he said, his voice low. I looked up. The speaker grill was vibrating ever so slightly. Then came the sound of static, gentle at first, then clear. Jared, I stepped back. That's my voice. Halden didn't react. It learns through repetition, he murmured. Don't feed it. The speaker hissed again. This time the voice changed, softer, feminine. Jared, honey, are you down there? My throat went dry. It was my mother's voice. I whispered, no, that's not possible. Halden turned sharply. Don't answer it. But the voice continued, trembling, gentle. Sweetheart, you left the light on again. My chest tightened. That exact sentence, she'd said it every night before bed when I was 12. I gripped my flashlight tighter, forcing my voice to stay calm. It's just copying old audio patterns. Has to be. The next sound made me drop the light entirely. Jared, open the door, man. It's me. Tyler's voice panicked, echoing from deeper inside the shelter. I looked at Halden. That's my roommate. He shook his head. No, it isn't. The voice called again, closer now. Come on, dude. I can't see anything. It was perfect. Every inflection, every nervous laugh Tyler ever had. Halden grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise. If it sounds like someone you love, it's already learned you, he hissed. I swallowed hard. How do I make it stop? He didn't answer. His gaze drifted toward the far tunnel, where the light flickered red for a moment, then white again. Finally, he said, don't say your name, not even in your head. That's how it follows. We kept moving. The corridors began to change, the walls shifting from poured concrete to rough stone, dark veins twisting through the surface. It didn't look like the same structure anymore. My flashlight beam caught crude carvings along the walls, hands, mouths, and spirals etched by something sharp. Some were fresh. The hum grew erratic, no longer steady. It trembled in the air, almost like a voice trying to form words. Halden, I whispered, what is this place? He stopped walking. It's older than the shelter, he said quietly. They built the defense structure on top of something they shouldn't have touched. The air rippled, an actual vibration against my skin. Then came another voice, whispering just above the hum. George. Halden stiffened, his jaw tightened. George, help me. He shook his head violently. Don't. You left me here, George. I felt the air behind us shift, the faintest drag of movement. Halden's flashlight quivered in his grip. He turned to me, eyes wild now. Keep walking. Don't look back. I obeyed. The corridor sloped downward again, the walls slick with water. My breath echoed too loud, too human. Every sound I made seemed to trigger an answer. Faint imitations of my steps, my breathing, my whispers, repeated just out of sync. When I whispered, stop, the echo came half a second later. Stop. Same tone, same fear. Halden muttered something under his breath, his voice shaking. It's getting closer. We reached another chamber, circular, carved entirely from stone. The ceiling arched high, the floor uneven. My light caught what looked like a carved relief at the center. A ring of faces melted into the rock, mouths open in a silent scream. The hum around us grew deafening. The speaker on the wall burst to life again, this time layering every voice it had stolen. My mother, Tyler, strangers, even Halden's own tone. Jared, come here. George, Jared. Each voice bled into the next until it sounded like one long, drawn-out breath. Halden pressed a trembling hand to his ear, shouting over the noise. It's trying to make you speak. Don't answer. I clamped my jaw shut. The lights flickered again. This time, not from electricity, but from pulses in the air itself, bright flashes that came with each syllable. The carvings on the walls shimmered faintly. For a moment, I thought they were breathing. Then, clear as a bell, my own voice spoke from behind me. George, this way. Halden froze. He turned his head slowly toward me, whispering, now it knows you. The hum cut out. For one heartbeat, there was absolute silence. Then every carving on the wall exhaled at once, a rush of air so strong it blew the dust from the floor. Halden grabbed my arm again, dragging me toward a tunnel that led deeper into the stone. His voice was barely audible over the wind. "Don't stop, it's awake now." I stumbled after him, clutching the recorder, its light still blinking red. We kept running until the tunnel opened into a wider chamber. The air changed again, still damp, but warmer, stale, almost breathable. My flashlight beam caught a line of rusted signs bolted to the wall. One of them read, "Command Room, Level B." Halden stopped to catch his breath, one hand braced on the wall. His skin glistened under the weak light. I noticed for the first time that his fingernails were dark, almost black like they'd been burned. He turned to me, his voice hoarse. "It's close now. You hear that hum? That's it feeding." I listened. The hum wasn't constant anymore. It rose and fell like breathing, drawn through metal lungs. "What does it feed on?" I asked. He looked at me for a long second before answering. "Recognition." I didn't know what that meant. We stepped through the blast door into the command room. The space was larger than I expected. Rows of control panels, dead monitors, cables coiled like vines. A long table sat in the middle, covered in dust thick as ash. Every surface shimmered faintly with condensation, as if the room had been sweating. The walls were lined with old communication gear, speakers, reel-to-reel machines, switchboards, and a cracked glass case that held an ancient microphone. The kind with a steel cage and a broken label reading Model 47B, Federal Signal Corp. Halden approached the mic slowly, his expression unreadable. "They used to broadcast drills from here," he said. "Safety tests, evacuation orders. Then one day they started hearing replies that didn't match the senders." He brushed his fingers along the table, leaving clean streaks in the dust. "That's when they sealed the place. Thought it was interference." I glanced at the nearest radio set. Its knobs were rusted in place, but the power light flickered, faint, orange, alive. "Halden," I said carefully, "did you ever hear it yourself?" He didn't look up. "Everyone down here did. Some answered. Some didn't get the chance to." The air grew heavier. My phone's mic picked up a low pulse, climbing in intensity. Then, without warning, one of the radios clicked on. The speaker hissed, coughed static, and then cleared. "It's me. Come see." My entire body went cold. It was my own voice. I stared at the radio. That's a playback. It's using my recordings." Halden's tone sharpened. "No, that's live." The light on the console blinked faster, in time with my heartbeat. I backed away from it, shaking my head. "That's not possible. I didn't. It's me." The voice spoke again, louder, closer, echoing from the other speakers around the room. Halden turned to me, panic cutting through his calm for the first time. "Don't look at it," he said. "If you see it, it learns your face." But I'd already turned. At the far end of the command room, framed in the flicker of a failing light, stood a figure. At first I thought it was just another reflection, some trick of glass and shadow. But it moved. A young man, my age, maybe identical in build, same jacket, same shoes, same trembling hand holding a flashlight. He stood perfectly still, watching me. The beam of my light wavered. I whispered, "Halden." He didn't answer. He was staring, too. The figure tilted its head, slow, deliberate, like it was studying me. Its body was correct in every detail, the way the shoulders slumped, the small rip in the sleeve, even the dirt smudge on my collar. Then the light hit its face. There wasn't one. Where its face should have been was a smooth, glistening surface, skin stretched flat, no eyes, no mouth, only the faint shimmer of reflected light. The texture was wrong, soft and shifting, like fog caught in glass. My throat closed. I took one step back. The figure took the same step forward. It raised its arm exactly as I did, perfectly synchronized. Every move I made, it mirrored, like a reflection that had learned the idea of delay. From the speakers above us, my voice whispered again, "It's me. Come see." Halden grabbed my shoulder, yanking me back toward the doorway. "Don't let it wear you," I stumbled. "What does that mean?" He shouted over the growing static. "Once it fits your name, it wears your shape. That's how it stays." The thing took another step forward, its movement stuttering, as if adjusting to a new form. Its skin rippled, faint outlines of features pressing from beneath, trying to match mine. Then its mouth began to form, not opening, but stretching outward from the blank surface, splitting until a dark cavity appeared where no mouth should exist. A sound poured out, not from the opening, but from every speaker in the room. Jared. 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 Each repetition twisted higher, sharper, until it became a single sustained tone that rattled the floor. Halden shoved me toward the exit. "Go, it's copying you." I turned to run, but the moment I moved, it moved too, matching me stride for stride. I could hear its footsteps blending with mine, half a second out of sync, like an echo trying to catch up. When I stopped, it stopped. When I breathed in, it breathed out. The lights along the ceiling exploded one by one, showering glass and sparks. The radio hissed and spat my voice in fragments. "Don't let it wear you." I looked over my shoulder and saw it running now, faster than I was. Its body snapped forward, limbs jerking like a puppet catching up to its master. Halden shouted something behind me. I didn't catch the words. I sprinted through the tunnel, flashlight beam bouncing wildly across the walls. Every sound echoed wrong. Too many footsteps, too many breaths. It was like the tunnel had filled with versions of me, all slightly late, all chasing. Then one of them spoke, my voice right beside my ear. "Keep going." I spun, nearly dropped the recorder. The beam caught the figure again, not one but several now, flickering in and out of the dark like reflections on broken glass, each one perfectly mimicking the movement of my arms, my panic, my fear. I screamed without meaning to. The sound bounced back from every direction, overlapping, folding in on itself. Dozens of me's crying out at once. Halden appeared from the side passage, grabbing me by the collar and hauling me through another doorway. We slammed it shut behind us, the echo still screaming beyond the wall. The new room was smaller, another control booth, half collapsed. Dust rained from the ceiling. Halden pushed me toward the far vent grill, shouting, "Crawl!" I dropped to my knees and started pulling the grate loose. My hands shook too much to get a grip. Behind us, something slammed into the door. Once, twice, then steady, rhythmic pounding. Each impact came with a distorted version of my own voice, yelling my name. "Jared! Jared! Jared!" The door bent inward. Halden grabbed the crowbar from my pack and jammed it across the handles. "Go!" he yelled. I climbed halfway into the vent, scraping my elbows raw on the metal. "What about you?" He looked back at the door, then at me. His face was pale, eyes wide. "I'm already part of it." Before I could speak, the door gave way. The figure stepped through, now fully wearing my form, except the face. It was still smooth, unfinished, but it was close. Too close. It tilted its head again, just like before. Halden turned to face it, voice low but steady. "You're not real." The thing mirrored him, the blank surface of its head rippling as it spoke his words a heartbeat later. "You're not real." He didn't hesitate. "Run," he said, to me this time. I crawled forward. The vent shook with every impact behind me. I could hear the distortion of my own breathing echoing through the ducts. One last sound reached me before I turned the corner, a shout, then metal splitting, Then silence. I kept crawling until the vent opened into another tunnel. I fell out hard onto the concrete, gasping. The recorder slipped from my pocket and clattered to the floor. Its red light was still blinking. I picked it up, trembling, and hit stop. The file name appeared on the screen automatically, recording 00213 AM, the same timestamp as before. From down the tunnel came a faint, steady rhythm. Footsteps. I raised my light, but the corridor was empty. Still, the sound didn't stop. Each step matched mine, half a beat behind. When I whispered, "Who's there?" the answer came, soft and identical. "Who's there?" And then it laughed. My laugh, hollow and wrong, bouncing down the tunnel like a recording playing itself inside out. They said they found me just after sunrise, curled up near the sealed hatch behind the mechanical building. The paramedic told me I was lucky. Mild hypothermia, a few bruises, nothing broken. When I asked about George Halden, the rescue officer just frowned. "There was no one else down there," he said. I didn't argue. I couldn't. They moved me to the campus infirmary. Small room, one window, antiseptic smell that clung to everything. My clothes were gone, probably incinerated. The nurse said I'd been muttering in my sleep, something about static and mirrors. When she left, I reached for my phone on the tray beside the bed. The screen was cracked, battery almost dead, but the recorder app was still open. The same session still running. Elapsed time, 7 hours, 14 minutes, 29 seconds. I hit play, static, breathing. Then my voice, faint and distorted. "Tyler, stay out of the shelter." It didn't sound like a warning. It sounded like a command, and I couldn't remember saying it. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the hallway made my pulse spike. When the radiator hissed, I heard it mimic the rhythm of a whisper. I tried to tell myself it was in my head, that what I saw down there was a product of oxygen loss, stress, noise. Then, around 2 a.m., someone knocked on my door. 3 slow knocks, then a voice, calm, casual, familiar. "Hey man, did you call me just now? You sounded weird." It was Tyler. I stared at the door, frozen. My throat wouldn't work. The floor beside my bed glistened faintly. Small, wet footprints leading from the window to the door. Tyler knocked again, a little louder. "Jared, you okay in there?" The phone on my tray lit up. The recorder app blinked red. Recording. I sat there, staring at the door handle, listening to my own voice leaking from the phone speaker, whispering over the sound of Tyler's knocking. "Let me in." Sometimes when the dorm gets quiet and the vents stop humming, I still hear my own voice under the floor. It keeps saying my name over and